We got a special guest today. We're going to bring him on right now. He is a man that needs some introduction. By day, he's reading legalese and dotting legal I's, but by night, he's a full throttle on the NFL draft beat. He's a huge college football fan, and I have to say, I don't know any other Canadian that has as good a feel about college football and college football knowledge as this guy. Bobby Bottles fails in comparison to this guy right here. Ladies and gentlemen, his name is Alex Batoni. Welcome to the pod.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. Long-time listener, first-time caller.
That's what we like to hear. That's what we like to hear.
That was some pretty lofty. You were right about he knows way more than me now. But the highest ranked Canadian, that's a big intro.
If I have any questions about a college football player, he's the first guy I go to.
Yeah. Well,
if I'm the highest ranked Canadian in college football knowledge, then I think I need to find a different job.
You probably should.
We see why the CFL is just thriving. That's
just so we're clear. I don't think I am, but I'll take the.
We have been watching the draft for a long time. I'm going to ask you a question before we even get going.
Yeah.
But do you remember the draft at a friend's house? Me, you, and a friend were watching it, and the Oakland Raiders at number 7 took, I believe it was Darius Hayward-Bay, and we were quite young watching it. We were like, what the hell are they doing?
That was Darius Hayward-Bay was a classic Al Davis.
Classic.
The guy ran a 3.3, nothing else matters pick.
Yeah.
So I think coming out of Maryland, he was like maybe rated a second rounder, maybe closer to the draft. He got, bumped up to maybe a low first. And then sure enough, he runs a 4.39 or a 4.33, and Al Davis takes him at 7. And
crazy. He went crazy.
Of course, he flames out of the league, and that's the end of it.
Hey, don't forget about his legendary Steelers fifth receiver career. He was their fourth or fifth option for a couple of years.
Yeah, I'm sure he was good for one of those long bend, chuck it up in the air, see what happens bombs, wasn't he?
The funny thing about it is I don't even remember not even one of those, to be honest. I cannot recollect anything of that. Like, we're talking about a time where they had Antonio Brown going downfield and getting all of those too, right? So they didn't really need Darius Hayward-Bay to make those plays.
The world's best decoy.
It was good to see Oakland threw it back this year or last year, the last draft, and drafted Henry Ruggs just because he ran like a 4.9 or 4.21 or something. They're like, that's it, first pick.
That's their MO. They got to go with it.
If they had the first overall pick, they were taking Henry Ruggs. That guy was going wherever they had him.
All right, so let's get into it here. We pretty much know, well, not pretty much. We do know that Trevor Lawrence is going on to Jacksonville. Heck, all the Jaguar fans have even donated, like gave him wedding gifts, and he's like donated money back to charities in the area. So it's pretty much a done deal. The drama starts right after, though. We got at 2, 3, and 4. The Niners trade a ton to move up to 3 to take a QB, presumably, only for then the Jets to then trade Sam Darnold. And now they are most definitely taking a QB. So, Al, where do you think the chips fall here? And are the Niners going to get the guy they wanted all along, or have the Jets completely messed that up?
So I think it's pretty safe to say your assumption's a right one. Trevor Lawrence is locked in. Write him in pen, write him in blood, write him in paint, write him whatever you want to write. Trevor Lawrence is going to Jacksonville. I think you can now equally write in pen and blood and paint that Zach Wilson, quarterback from Utah, is going to the Jets. I think the Jets did that a long time ago. I think they held off on trading Sam Darnold because they just wanted to check on his meds. It's a weird year with COVID and everything, so the draft process is a little bit wonky. I think when San Fran made that trade, they knew that 1 and 2 were going to go that way. Because I think it's a little bit insane to make that trade not knowing that. Having said that, they're probably satisfied with any one of those 4 guys. The 4 guys being Zach Wilson, Mac Jones, Trey Lance, and Justin Fields. So if we know that Trevor Lawrence and Zach Wilson go 1-2, question becomes who goes 3. You got 3 guys. You got Zach Wilson. Sorry, you got Mac Jones, Trey Lance, Justin Fields. As soon as it happened, everyone came out and said, whoa, this is for Justin Fields. But then a big part of the media and the insiders in the league all started saying, "Whoa, don't go so fast. This could be Mac Jones." To me, the idea that it could be Mac Jones is insane.
Why would you trade up for him, right?
It's
He'd be around where they had the pick before, no?
No, it's not. It's not even that. You know, the NFL is a quarterback-driven league. There's a real chance that 5 quarterbacks can go in the top, I don't know, 15 this year. Maybe less, maybe top 11, depending on how it shakes out. But you look at those guys, and the type of guys you trade up for are the type of guys that have high ceilings, that have the potential to be the next Patrick Mahomes. Justin Fields, Trey Lance have that. They're super athletes. They can throw the ball a mile. They can do stuff off script, which in the NFL now is more important than ever. Mac Jones is like, you know, he's your regular drop back, stay in the pocket, efficient quarterback. He'll make passes. He'll run a successful offense. But, you know, is he going to dazzle you? Probably not. So, you know, we have a case here, I think, of did Kyle Shanahan outsmart himself in the sense that he wants a guy who can run his Kyle Shanahan offense and get the ball where it needs to be? Or is he pulling one over on everybody and he's actually in love with Fields or Lance? That's the real question, and that's why all the intrigue starts at number 3. If it's Mac Jones, man, I spent a year watching Mac Jones put up a ton of stats, great numbers, but he's nothing special. He's not a trade three ones to get. So I guess time will tell. But
who do you like better, Fields or Lance?
They're different. They're different quarterbacks. So Lance is the big, 6'4", rocket arm, athletic, raw. The guy only played 19 games in college. He opted out last year, so he only played 1 game before his season was canceled. He's like the piece of clay that you can model into whatever you want. Justin Fields is a little more polished. He's got tons of games under his belt at big time programs, Georgia, then Ohio State. Played in some massive games. You see what he did to Clemson in the semifinals this year. Just torched them for 5 or 6 touchdowns, 300 plus yards. But even with Fields, you got some questions. He's got accuracy issues sometimes. Sometimes when he's out of the pocket, he tends to sort of lose the script. Some criticism is he's a one guy. I think that's bullshit. Am I allowed to swear on this pod, by the way?
Yeah, that's fine.
I think that's bullshit. I think he processes really quickly. He's obviously benefited from the guys he had at Ohio State, Chris Olave, who's just unbelievable and probably the first wide receiver taken next year. But at the end of the day, it's sort of pick your poison. They both have similar traits, whereas Mac Jones is totally not those guys, not even close.
Got it. All right. Here's a crazy stat for you guys. 44 quarterbacks have gone first, second, or third overall in the last 50 NFL drafts. You want to know how many of them have won Super Bowls for the team that drafted them?
I think it's 0.
2. Peyton Manning and Troy Aikman. So the thinking is, if you want a franchise quarterback, you got to take him in the first round. Even more so, you got to relatively take him really high in the first round. But even that, it's exceptionally risky. Just because you take a quarterback really high, a la Mitchell Trubisky, does not mean you're drafting a franchise quarterback. So my question for you here, and you kind of already hinted at, I think, who you would take. Of all of these quarterbacks taken here, okay, and I'm going to take Trevor Lawrence and leave him out of this discussion because I think we would all say this guy is going to be a franchise quarterback. But out of the other QBs, which do you think has the best chance, realistically, of being a franchise quarterback and possibly even leading his franchise to a Super Bowl?
So, just to your point, the chances are, and the money's on the fact that let's talk. There's 5 guys in this first round that could be drafted. Chances are 3 of them, probably 4 of them, are going to flare out realistically. And Lawrence could be one of those guys. I don't think he is, but he could very well be. You don't know. That's just what the statistics say. But if I had to pick, gun to my head, I'd probably go Trey Lance.
Really?
And the reason is, again, he's got the raw talent, he's got the body, he's got the arm, he's got the intelligence. Fields has all that too, but there's some questions. But the problem with Trey Lance is there's questions about him too. He's played one game in a year.
Yeah.
That's gonna be a problem for some people.
For sure.
Quarterback's the
Zach
hardest
Wilson.
position. It's by far the hardest position to draft in all of sports. Like, it's not even close because there's so much more in the physical traits. I love to answer that question because I think it's going to be Trey Lance for the simple fact of I think he's going 3 to San Fran. Like, I'm with you. I don't think Mac Jones is going there. If they were taking him, I don't think they would have announced it, first of all. Second of all, yeah, you don't move up. But I think part of it is fit. And San Fran, of these top 5 teams, probably has – well, sorry, not they do. They have by far the best roster. So I think Trey Lance has the biggest chance. But I have a question. If you had to pick the biggest bust potential of these 5.
I like it.
Because this is probably a lot. It'd be harder to say who's going to do it, but who do you think is going to who's got the biggest bust?
So let's get some perspective here. If Mac Jones goes 15 or 20 or 18, whatever it might be, if he goes in the teens or early 20s or even early teens, he's got the potential to be a decent NFL starter. He does a lot of good things well, throws the ball well, he's accurate. I think his accuracy was tops in college football ever. His completion percentage is up there. But if you're taking the guy at 3, guys who get taken that high after you trade that much, if they bust at that point, now you set your franchise back, 5, 6 years? You don't have a first-round pick for 3 years, and you've traded up for a guy who's a bust. If he gets taken at 3rd, he's the biggest one who could bust. But if he's later on, forget it. Let's say he turns into a serviceable starter. That's a risk you're willing to take. The other guy, I think, Zach Wilson, for as good as a quarterback as he's been, he's another guy. He had a great year last year. The year before that, he was hurt. The year before that, he was hurt. He essentially won the starting job this year. He played for Utah, didn't play against great competition, got shellacked in a couple games he did play. And it's one of those things. It's these guys, depending on where you take them, you can afford to miss on a guy in the middle of the first round. You can afford to miss on a guy in the teens. You can afford to miss on a guy in the 20s. When you're at 2, you can't afford to miss there. You miss at 2, when are you ever going back? And if you got to get back to 2, look what it cost the 49ers. That's a new benchmark for trading quarterbacks now. Trading up into the top 3, the 49ers and the Dolphins set a new benchmark. It's never been done. The price has never been that high. And now you guys know how it is. It can only ever be higher. It's never going to be lower than that. So
I'd love to have something about Zach Wilson. I've heard that he's really, really thin, like super. Like, I think he's 6'4", but I think he's under like 200, which could be a problem.
I don't think he's that small, but he's had a shoulder issue. He's had a thumb issue. The shoulder issue really prevented him from playing much at all. Not last year, but the year before. But again, he's it's one of those things. It's the reason the Jets waited to trade Darnold. They wanted to check his medicals. They wanted to recheck his shoulder. And when that checked out, they traded Sam Darnold. So listen, we live in an NFL now where it's not the NFL that we watched growing up. It's a lot, the quarterbacks are the golden children. They're so protected that, he's going to be sheltered. He's going to be able to not get hammered night in, night out. The Jets offensive line is pretty good. It's not a lot of these times these QBs goes to these bottom feeder teams and their lines suck and the receivers suck and the whole team stinks. But the Jets took Mekhi Becton last year and in the first round. He's a mountain of a man, great left tackle. And so it's good that they got that in place. They got some decent weapons on a receiver. So, it's in the NFL, you got to ask if all these guys are be durable. Look at Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray's a man, he's an NFL quarterback in a child's body. And he's had some injury concerns, but he's managed to survive. So, these guys who are smaller, the trade-off is they're fleet of foot. They can run away from guys. So, you trade that size for the athleticism.
If you were the Jets at 2, would you have traded Sam Darnold and would you take Zach Wilson, or would you have traded that pick, or would you have taken somebody else?
So again, back to the point I made before, you only get so many chances to pick in the top, in this case, 2, top 3, top 4, top 5. You only get so many kicks at that can. And it leads me to another point that I'll get to. When you're there and you've identified the fact that you want to move on from somebody, you just got to do it. I'm a Dolphins fan. I watched him take Tua last year. I watched him go back and forth with Fitzy. It worked in the moment, but it had to have done harm to Tua's psyche. So if you're going to make the decision to take Zach Wilson, then I'm all for trading Sam Darnold. You get him out, you get the kid in, you let him learn, you let him be the starter, and you don't have someone looking over his shoulder.
Totally, but would you have kept Darnold for one more year? Try to take one, try to add some picks? No?
No. Okay. So I think, so I read somewhere that the 49ers had originally offered number 12 for Sam Darnold 2 months ago. The Jets said no, because they wanted to check on Wilson's medicals. They didn't know if his medicals were going to check out. They did. They traded him to Carolina. Is that a mistake? Probably. If you have a good feeling that you're going to take a quarterback in a strong quarterback draft, then you got to maximize your return on the guy you're trading.
Yeah, I heard they were split. I heard that room was split on what they wanted to do, but.
Frank, do you want to get in here?
Yeah, I got a couple of questions. So just, I guess we all look at the mock drafts and stuff, and we kind of, you look at your favorite expert and kind of, who they got going to certain places. And I guess we can say that Atlanta may be the first team to take a non-quarterback, be it Kyle Pitts. There's a lot to like about him. Maybe there's a couple good wide receivers on the board. My question to Al is, if the draft starts at number 4 with non-quarterback type of positions, do you see a team that's outside, possibly, let's say the top 10, that might want to get into that top, like draft high to get into that top 10 to take a quarterback? If there's a team, who do you think that target would be?
Are we talking about trading with Atlanta to come up to 4?
Maybe Atlanta at 4, or maybe, Carolina at 8 now that they got Darnold. Just anywhere you see in the top 10 where you could see something like that happen.
So let's talk this out. Let's imagine for a second, like, what we think is going to happen happens. Quarterbacks go 1, 2, 3. Now you got potentially 2 first-round guys left. You got Detroit sitting there at 7. But we don't know what they're going to do. They just got Jared Goff, fine. But I think we all know what Jared Goff is. I think the Lions know what Jared Goff is. I think the Lions took Jared Goff so they could get an extra first-round pick. I don't think they really wanted Jared Goff. You got the Broncos at 9, who they don't seem all that sold on Drew Lock. They on apparently Deshaun Watson. They were in on apparently signing a veteran quarterback. So do they come up if they need to? We all know what's going on with the Patriots. The Patriots, I'm sure, would love one of these guys. But the question becomes, how far do you come up if you think – so this draft is essentially 5 quarterbacks, 2 tackles, a tight end, a wide receiver, and then you got 2 more wide receivers, maybe a DB. That's essentially your top 10. So if you commit to the fact that you want to trade up to get a quarterback, let's say you want to go back to 6 with the Dolphins or to 7, are you going to come up knowing full well that you're going to have to beat someone to that spot? Because let's say you're Denver, you sit there at 9 and you're convinced Atlanta's going Pitts, Cincinnati's going either Chase or one of the tackles, Miami's going receiver 100%. That Detroit's a bit of a wild card. They'll probably go with receiver too. Who knows? Or tackle. Now you're there at 9. Are you going to wait? I don't know. John Elway doesn't strike me as the patient type. I don't think he'd sit back and wait for that to fall to him. But just to your point about number 4, back to my previous point about you only get so many chances to be up at the top of the draft. I think Atlanta would be crazy to not seriously consider one of those QBs, Fields or Lance or Jones or whoever's left. Yeah, Matt Ryan's 36. Yeah, they just restructured his contract. It's impossible to cut him next year. It's impossible to cut him the year after because of the dead cap hit. But again, you only get so many chances to be that high without having to give up multiple drafts. So do they do that? I don't know. I think so. I hope so as a Dolphins fan. But that I think is the biggest intrigue of the whole draft is what Atlanta does, and they've been making some noise trying to trade out. But like I said, who's going to come up that high, knowing what it's going to cost them, and they know it's going to cost them because they're going to have to pay the same thing that the Niners paid.
I got a team that I think is a dark horse to watch because you said New England that I think is one, but Washington, I think they're the team they have a chance to come up from 19. That's my. I think they're a lot better than people realize. So I'm really interested to see them.
I don't disagree with that, but I think the important caveat there is nobody in the top 10 who's willing to trade, and those teams I think are Miami, if the guys they want aren't there, or Detroit, who has holes all over the roster and need everything. I don't think those guys are willing to go as far down as 19. That's the problem.
Fair point.
Now, if he gets to 12, where the Eagles are sitting now,
right?
Maybe that's a more reasonable drop down. 12 to 19 isn't as bad as 6 to 19.
Yeah.
Isn't as bad as 7 to 19. So that's, I think, what the sweet spot is.
Yeah, and I was going to say, but my guess would have been if I had to pick a team, I'm still thinking the Bears. They're not going to an Andy Dalton. I don't think so. But I don't think they get into the top 10. I think Al's right. You start hitting that sweet spot, 11, 12, they may make a deal, try to get up into that, top 14, top 15 if that's still available. But yeah, I have to agree with him on this one.
The other thing is, Frank, you said, Carolina traded for Darnold. They're not. I wouldn't be so sure. If it comes time on the clock and one of Fields or Lance are sitting there at 8, I would not put it past Carolina to draft one of them. They'll probably, if they aren't there, they'll probably take a tackle. I'd assume they'll take either Slater or Sewell if one of them are there. But if those quarterbacks are there, Sam Darnold isn't going to prevent you from drafting one of those guys.
Wow.
Yeah, he's right. I saw 2 mock drafts with Carolina had Fields.
Wow.
Yeah,
it's interesting.
Nuts.
Yeah.
I gotta ask you about Pitts because I'm so intrigued by this guy. I gotta admit I haven't watched a lot of him, but to have a tight end ranked so highly, I mean, the last tight end to be drafted so high, I guess, was Kellen Winslow in 2004. He was drafted 6th overall. This guy might go higher than that. As fantasy football enthusiasts, really there's 2 good tight ends. There's Travis Kelce and there's George Kittle. Is this guy going to be good enough that this guy walks into the league and is like already in that class of tight end?
So you're not a Darren Waller fan, I take it?
Okay, yes, I forgot about Waller. Okay, I still don't think he's in that tier though of those top 2 guys.
He might be.
He might be. Okay.
Here's the deal with Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts is the second best player in this draft, maybe even the first.
Jesus, a tight end?
Take the tight end label, write it on a piece of paper, crumple up that piece of paper, and throw it in the garbage. The guy's 6'6". He's got an 84-inch wingspan. He runs a 4.44. You want to talk about matchup nightmare? Yeah. Put that guy on the field. Line him up at the X receiver. Line him up at the wide receiver. Line him on inline tight end. Line him up at the slot. Who's going to cover that guy?
Yeah.
Who's covering that guy? The guy's a machine. He's a ball vacuum. He's unbelievable. He boxes guys out like a basketball player, but he also has the inline speed to run past guys. There's a clip. I forget where I was watching it. I think on one of the draft shows. I watched a clip. They were playing, I want to say Kentucky, and I think the Kentucky DB runs I think he ran like a 4.33, something obscene. And in the video, in the clip, Pitts catches the ball and just runs away from him. Like runs away to the point where there's daylight, 2 or 3 guys of daylight between them. It's insane. For his size to be able to move like that, which again, selfishly as a Dolphins fan, I hope he's there at 6. If he's there at 6, I waste no time in turning that card in. But to your point about fantasy, it all depends where he lands. Just like anybody.
Yeah.
If he lands with the Falcons, take all those guys. Ridley, Jones, Pitts, take them all.
Yeah.
Ryan, take them all.
Yeah.
Because that'll be the best offense in the NFC. But no disrespect to Tampa, that'll be the best offense in the NFC, unless Ryan breaks down. Which again brings us back to the other point: are you taking a quarterback there?
It's so interesting. I love this time of year.
I love building my line. I think building the line, like I love left tackles. I've always been a guy that's been like that. Like I want to build my line, but Cincinnati at 5, wouldn't it be kind of cool if they took Jamar Chase and paired him back with Joe Burrow?
So here's what I'll say about that. There's a lot of back and forth going on about what they're going to do. For the longest time, it was just assumed that they're going tackle because they got to protect the franchise. Then there was some chatter about Burrow lobbying for Chase and then getting back together and bringing the band back together and lighting it up again and blah, blah, blah. The Bengals released pictures of their new uniforms yesterday.
I saw that.
And one of the pictures, Joe Burrow is sitting in his new uniform on a throne, facing the camera, sitting down. And he's got a 10-inch scar on his left knee. From the top of his knee to the top of his shin. It's massive. Look up the picture if you haven't seen it. I don't understand how you, as a Bengals front office person, see what happened to Joe Burrow last year, how many times he was sacked, how many times he was hit, how many times he was hurried, and not go get the best tackle in the draft. Maybe the best tackle is coming around in quite some time in Penei Sewell. But that's another guy who opted out last year, only 19 years old, huge guy. Rashawn Slater, another guy to Northwestern, huge guy, opted out last year, young. Both those guys I think are great. I don't know how you're the Bengals and you go for the shiny toy that is Jamar Chase when you need the beef to protect the guy who you hope is your franchise quarterback, especially after what happened last year. It was obvious before he got hurt that their main priority was offensive line. After he got hurt, to me, it's malpractice to not draft a tackle.
Yeah. Jerry Jones take the quarterback. Take the wide receiver. He would take the wide receiver 100%. Jerry 100%. Jones.
I would too. It's just I don't know. Just because it's Jamar Chase. Any other wide receiver, forget it. But
let's talk about that for a second. Jamar Chase is incredible. Another guy who sat out last year. Okay, another young guy. He's 20 years old. He's an amazing wide receiver. Incredible. Best wide receiver in the draft, probably by far. The problem is it's a deep wide receiver draft. It's an okay tackle class, but it's a little bit top heavy. You got Sewell, you got Slater, and you have Darvaza. After that, who are you going to go with? Alex Leatherwood, Alabama. He was supposed to be a first-round pick. He didn't have the greatest year. So, what do you do? Everybody knows you build the trenches. You build your 3 most important positions at the top of the draft are quarterback, left tackle, defensive end, DB. Receivers are a luxury. Tight ends are a luxury.
Running backs are luxury.
Running backs are forget it. We only talk about running backs, but
take them up there.
I was going to go there.
if Jamar Chase ends up being Jerry Rice, will it matter if Joe Burrow is spending the entire game lying on his back?
No, I hear you. I like my Big Ten tackles too. So that's if you have a bona fide star.
So my question to Al wasn't actually about a specific running back. My analogy was more running backs like goalies in the NHL draft. Like you don't have to take one in the first round. You can probably take one, in the mid and get a decent goalie. But and Al, in your opinion, if you're an NFL GM and you say I need a running back, but I think I can get one in X round. What's the round you're looking at taking a decent running back? Is it the second? Is it the third? Is it the fifth? What are you looking at?
With the guys in this draft, there's 3 top-end guys. There's Najee Harris, Alabama, Travis Etienne from Clemson, and Javonte Williams from North Carolina. Pick your poison. If you look at the the draft experts, those guys are 1, 2, 3 in any order, depending on who they like better. A lot of it's Najee, Etienne, back and forth, but Javonte Williams is great too. I think, again, being selfish, I hope the Dolphins make the jump for Najee at 18. It's too high for him. But I think if they think they're going to wait to the second round to get him, they're going to be sorely mistaken. I think at the end of the first round, if he's sitting there, the Steelers will sprint as fast as they can to the podium to draft him.
You think the Steelers are going to take him in the first round if he's there?
That guy is a Pittsburgh Steeler if I've ever seen one. He's a bull. You're
giving me goosebumps. I love it.
He's tough.
Too bad you guys can't block.
The problem is though, they need help on the line as well though.
You can't block for him.
I mean, that's Jerry Jones. That's a Jerry Jonesism. You know, they don't care. They need a bruising running back. They don't care about the line. Listen, if Najee Harris gets to 24 and the Steelers don't take him, I'll be stunned. And then after that, the Bills maybe. But Frank, to answer your question, I think the sweet spot is end of round 1, top of round 2. Because if the Dolphins don't take one of those guys in the first, they got picked 36 in the second, they will most definitely take one. Whoever's left, those 3.
Harris with the Bills would look good for them. That would be a nice addition for them.
Joe, if it's any comfort, Indy's at 21. We're not taking him, so he's all yours.
Thank you. Frank, your question kind of goes along with the question I was going to have. Is there somebody that maybe goes at the end of the first round or second round, third round, somebody or somebody's couple guys that you have your eye on and say, you know what, this guy could potentially be a stud?
So,
and he's not getting talked enough about.
I had an answer for the longest time about this question, but I think everybody's caught on to it. So I think he ends up going in the mid-teens. But the linebacker from Kentucky, I don't know how to say his name. I think it's Jamin Davis.
Yep.
The guy's a stud. He's a sideline linebacker. He's quick, makes plays, gets after the ball. A lot of people, if you're reading mock drafts in February and January, he's in the second, third round. I saw one today where he was at 19, I think, to Washington. He's one of those guys who, and Kentucky's becoming a little bit of a linebacker U now. They've had basically 3 drafts in a row now where linebackers are probably going to go high. So probably him, probably one of the running backs. Chuba Hubbard at Oklahoma State is a Canadian guy. Had a monster year 2 years ago, led the NCAA in rushing. Had a pretty terrible year last year. But a lot of that was, I think, scheme driven. They were behind in a lot of games, Oklahoma State last year. So probably one of those guys. There's the thing about this draft is it's if you read about it in depth, because of COVID and everything else, every draft analyst in the world will tell you, after round 3, you're kind of just rolling dice.
You're throwing darts at a dartboard.
They're lottery tickets.
There's not a lot of tape on these guys. Some of them, the medicals are tough. The character stuff, you can't really get a read on them because you haven't spoken to these guys a lot. So everyone's saying sort of after 3 that, throw your darts at the board, see where they land.
It's going to be a crapshoot. That's quite true. I was going to ask about a linebacker that I saw really high in a lot of mocks, and now he's dropped. Micah Parsons. I watched some tape on him. He looked nice. What do you got to say about him?
So Micah Parsons, another guy who opted out. Penn State, for the longest time, 2 years ago, he was the guy in this draft. There were 2 guys who were the guy who were sort of not talked about as much anymore. One is Micah Parsons. The other one was Greg Rousseau in Miami. So Micah Parsons, the problem with him is, again, the opt-out, these football guys, these old school football guys, if you read about it and if you hear about it, if a guy opts out, he's soft. He doesn't like football enough. He doesn't care about his teammates, blah, 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 blah. It's all bullshit. We know that. But some guys are really about that. So that's a knock on him, number one. Number two, he's got character concerns. Some stuff off the field, some questionable things have happened. I think he had team issues, late for meetings, things like that. So he's one of those guys that, again, you get him in the right offense, you get him in the right you get him in the right defense, you get him in the right system, the guy's going to be a beast. Like, my biggest fear is he ends up in New England as a Dolphins fan, because that guy is a New England linebacker. So he's the talent is there. It's just, can he keep it together?
Belichick will keep them together. I could see that pick happening.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask a really hard one here. Give me your top 10 mock, like your mock for the top 10.
No trades?
No trades. Just or if you want to throw a trade in, throw a trade in there.
We'll end it with this too, right? Well, and then this is gonna be the bookend right here.
Okay, I'll keep it easy. I will go, big shocker, Lawrence at 1, Wilson 2. I have to go Fields at 3.
Wow.
Because I just can't. Like, I just can't sell myself on Mac. I just can't do it. I can't convince myself that they traded that many picks for Mac Jones. And if it's him, I'm wrong. Great. I don't see it. Again, 4 gets interesting. I hope it's Trey Lance. I think it should be Trey Lance. I know I've read that there's a lot of internal strife about who it should be. I think ultimately they end up going Kyle Pitts. 5, again, Slater or Sewell. I'll go Sewell just because he's the guy who's been talked up. 6, the Dolphins, between Chase, Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle. It's got to be one of those guys. I'll say, for the sake of argument, it's going to be Chase because he's going to be the top-rated guy. 7 will probably be Devontae Smith to the Lions. 8, I would say, is Rashawn Slater to Carolina. 9, I don't remember who's at 9. Denver. So in this scenario, Trey Lance is still on the board. So yeah, Denver's got to go Trey Lance.
Bobby would be loving life if this happens.
The beautiful thing is that, you haven't get to the Cowboys, but the Broncos basically have 3 needs, and they're going to fill it with one of those: quarterback, linebacker, or tackle. They've literally got 3 needs, and they're going to get one of those 3. So it's going to be great. And then 10, what do you got for Dallas?
Dallas, they have to go Pat Surtain. They have to. Their defense stinks. Their DBs suck. He's you want to talk about pedigree again, coming from a Dolphins fan, the son of probably the best DB in the history of the Dolphins. Played at Alabama. Kid's a rock solid. If they don't go DB, again, back to your point, Joe, don't ever underestimate Jerry Jones' ability to do something stupid.
That's what I'm saying. He's not taking him. So it makes all the sense in the world to take him. It's not happening. He's going to take an offensive player.
No, I could totally see him taking Jalen Waddle, like
when you
for no reason.
When you sail on the boat of a Bond victim, you don't draft something unsexy. Like, he was on that yacht last year, and it's like he's taking a wide receiver. Just pencil a wide receiver in there, whatever is the highest.
Just one last point. Speaking of wide receivers, we don't really talk too much about them. These wide receivers in this draft, the top end of these wide receivers, Chase, Waddle, Smith, these 3 guys are better than everybody who went in the draft. All of them. Ruggs, Judy, all 3 of them are significantly better than those guys. So then the depth of wide receiver this year is unbelievable too. You're going to get some great guys at the end of round 1, beginning of round 2, even into round 3. Rashad Bateman, Kadarius Toney, you guys are bullets. Rashad Bateman's a little small. Rondale Moore. This is if you need a receiver, this is the draft to need it.
Do you know why I love mock drafts? Because most of them are completely wrong, and it's
totally
beautiful. Wrong. But it's because if a team's got a guy graded in the 6th round that they really like a tackle in the 6th round, they're not going to take a tackle in. They're going to address a different need, right? So it's but it's why it's become the best day outside of Super Bowl is the NFL draft.
This draft, to the point we made before about the crapshoot, I'm interested to see how this draft works with respect to guys who everyone thinks should have gone later who are going to go earlier because guys don't care about waiting. If they like a guy, they're just going to take him because they know that the later rounds are going to be a mess.
Hey, you know what we never talked about, and you brought up his name, Deshaun Watson and all. We haven't talked about him at all. Do you